Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's the end of another year that we've done here on Game Show Gumbo. 366 days, a lot of ups and downs for the channel. But as you know, we always end it with the big one. The best, worst, and blandest game show of 2024. Now, some update that I want to give. I originally had this planned because at the beginning of the year, I was reviewing almost everything that came out, and I wasn't working. However, in March, I landed a new job. I'm working 40 hours a week, sometimes more on Saturdays, so I haven't had the chance to review everything. And because of the work schedule and everything, and other things that are happening, I am not doing what I originally planned, which is going to be the 5 best, 5 worst, and maybe 2 blandest. But instead, it's going to be 1 and 1, as it has originally been intended ever since I started doing this many moons ago. Well, let's get to it. It's time to give you my picks for the best, worst, and blandest game shows of 2024. We're going to kick things off with the best. What was the best game show of 2024? 2024 has actually been a really great year for game shows, whether it be here or abroad or on the internet or stuff like that. I mean, speaking of the internet, did anybody else, originally think, oh no, Pop Culture Jeopardy? But you know what? After watching it and seeing Johnny Gilbert go on this great Inglorious Bastards rant, I mean, chef's kiss. And it makes Pop Culture Jeopardy worth watching. Plus, it's more than just, 3 players doing a random tournament. It's 3 teams doing a pretty decent tournament from all things considered. And I enjoyed it. But when it comes to the global game, as it speaks, I don't think a franchise has done better than Wheel of Fortune. Now, when I mean Wheel of Fortune, I'm talking about in the global sense of Wheel of Fortune. Not just here in America, but the UK, Australia, and South Africa. We'll start with the US version. This was Pat's last year for the regular syndicated run of Wheel of Fortune. He is still doing one last season of Celebrity Wheel of Fortune, and I think there was a celebrity special for Christmas, and it was really good. But that will be around in 2025, and those celebrity versions are always fun to watch. I mean, it's loose, it's fun, and you don't really get to see stuff like that in the super condensed syndicated version. Like the syndicated version is about 18, 19 minutes, and the primetime version is like 40, 41 minutes. So even though there are fewer rounds, there's more fun to be had with the celebrities and all that fun stuff. And Pat was on his game for the last 6 months of his tenure, and he went out on top. Over 40, if you count the NBC run when he started on, December 28th, 1981, he has been with the show for 43 years. That is a game show record that I don't think is ever going to be beaten. Not here or anywhere in the world, because I think the closest might have been Magnus. No, I don't think anybody in the UK or Australia or any country has been with a show for 43 years. And people were also thinking, Wheel of Fortune, how is Ryan gonna take over Pat's mantle? And he did it in the perfect way possible. He wasn't going to be Pat Sajak. He was going to be Ryan Seacrest. And Ryan Seacrest hosting Wheel of Fortune as Ryan Seacrest is really, really good. I'd honestly put his hosting for the first... He's only been on the show for about 4 months right now. I would put him solidly at 3, right behind Pat and Chuck. Yet, I still see him getting better. Like, when he gets more... He's always comfortable in front of the camera. I mean, you've seen that all throughout the years. Even in his first shows, like Gladiators 2000 or Wild Animal Games. By the time he actually got to American Idol, he was a pro. And not just a regular pro, but a real pro. And with Wheel of Fortune now, he's one of the best in the business, bar none. And I like how they've retro modernized the set, because now the puzzle board looks a lot like the old board from like the 80s. And then you have the wheel itself, which looks really good. The set looks fantastic. And I can't say a lot of bad things about Wheel, so I'm not going to. It has been a superstar this year. And not just in the US. Now we're going to talk about the world itself. The South Africa just had a new version launch a few months ago. And granted, it doesn't have the changing keys modern theme that we're used to here in the States. It's got the mid-2010s track that you hear playing when anybody is streaming Wheel of Fortune on the Switch or PS4 or stuff like that. It's a fine theme, but the set is actually quite like the international sets for the UK and Australian versions. And South Africa's wheel doesn't have much of a budget, but the grand prize they have is a brand new car. And anytime Wheel of Fortune gives out a brand new car in the South African version, that is top notch. It's like giving away a car in the Australian version of Wheel of Fortune back in the day. Hard to do, but if somebody does it, it's top tier. Then you get to the big thing for Wheel of Fortune abroad, and that is being brought back to UK airwaves after 23 years. Or maybe 22 years, my math is hazy. But Graham Norton hosted both the UK revival and Australian revival. The Australian revival is currently on 10. We'll get to 10 later. But the UK revival on ITV did well for itself. Granted, it was up against UK Gladiators, and I almost put UK Gladiators on top, but I just think the global impact that Wheel of Fortune had this year made it top notch. And granted, our version of Wheel with the same 3 contestants might be a little off-putting to some, but the way the UK and Australian versions have handled the Hour version, it's pretty much the same show, just with British playing with pounds and Australia playing with Aussie fun bucks. It's still really good. And the way that they've handled the game differently from the American version is very fun, to say the very least. Graham Norton himself is a very good host. Granted, there's no letter activator, but right now that role is pretty much obsolete. I mean, the South African version doesn't have a letter activator. The only letter activator I think around is Vanna, but she's essentially a hostess of the... Essentially, her and Ryan Seacrest in the US version are essentially the host and hostess of the show. There's 2 hosts for it, and it's still really damn good. Well, I'm starting to ramble here a bit, but Wheel of Fortune, really my number 1 pick of the year. I'm taking a cue from Yahtzee when he says the blandest video game of the year. I'm talking about, he says it's a game that doesn't push anything forward, takes no risk, doesn't innovate, doesn't do anything like that. Now, I know a lot of people are saying, oh, this is a slam dunk, it's going to be Scrabble for the CW. Well, I'm going to give Scrabble some credit. At least they tried. They tried to make a different format than the 80s and 93 version had. They at least tried to incorporate more of the board game than they did in the 80s and 90s version. And while it is boring, it's not necessarily bland. Because Bland, to me, is Blank Slate for Game Show Network. Now, it's got the ultimate tropes of being bland. Mario Lopez as a host is serviceable, but he adds no flavor to the show whatsoever. Like, he's been doing the shame stick when hosting a show since Masters of the Maze back in 1995. Like, his hosting hasn't improved. He is just the same person doing the same thing for almost 30 years now when he's on a game show. Candy Crush, he was the same. X Factor, he was the same. It's just the same old with Mario Lopez. However, I'm convinced that he hasn't aged since 1995. Also, the set. It is very, very bland. Despite the CD attachments as background set design. But the background itself, I felt like is reused from like baggage and lingo from like a decade ago. And the game itself is essentially copy-pasted from the original match game from the 60s. It is very outdated. The revival from the 70s modernized it, and that's what everybody thinks a fill-in-the-blank game should be like. It should be like Match Game 74, 5, whatever. It should not be the original match game. And that's what people were saying about this show. There is no point to this show existing. When Match Game had a long revival for about 5 seasons on ABC. Granted, during the time when Blank Slate was launched, we still had the Alec Baldwin, accidental homicide on the set of Rust. He has since been acquitted of that multiple times. The appeal didn't go through, so he is a free man, and those episodes are currently running on Game Show Network. So now, officially, Blank Slate has no reason to exist. And the generic $10,000 grand prize. Look, Game Show Network is always going to do $10,000 grand prizes. That's just what they do to save budget and everything like that, and that's fine. But the way that it's been going right now, they could do something more than win gets you 1,000, grand prize is 10,000. And, like, I'll give Beat the Bridge credit here. At least you have the opportunity to win more than 10,000. You can win up to $15,000, which is fine. But that show had a reason to exist. Let's take a look at every Game Show Network show this year that made new episodes or whatsoever. Split Second is one of the best revivals I've seen in the past 5 years. That's got a reason to exist. Masterminds is fantastic. That's got a reason to exist. Plus, who doesn't want to take on Mark LeBeast Lebet in the trivia contest? Look, if I had more faith in my trivia knowledge, I would take on the Beast. You have America Says, which I think has gone away. Then you had Ask Yahoo, that was last year. That had a reason for existing, but there's a bunch of unaired episodes now, so that's gone away. Beat the Bridge was a new show that has a reason to exist. Flipside is both syndicated by CBS and GSN at the same time. That's got a reason to exist because it tries something new. It tries something fresh. Blank Slate did none of that. And that is my blandest game show of 2024. For the worst show of 2024, I know everybody is thinking it's going to be one of 3 shows. Well, let's narrow it down. You know what? It's not Deal or No Deal Island. Granted, I did not like that show whatsoever, but as time wore on, and then we got the big reveal that Howie Mandel was the banker the entire time, which was a great role reversal. I enjoyed that little surprise. And Joe Manganiello actually got better than the first episode. So that's not on the list. Then there's the recent stuff about Beast Games. And I will be perfectly honest, I almost put that on the blandest list. Because it doesn't do anything new. Like, all the stuff that you're seeing is pretty much what Mr. Beast has done on his YouTube channel. And there's also the controversy surrounding everything around him right now. The show being like a sloppy shop. Then you have controversies surrounding him, and then you have his association with Logan Paul and KSI about Lunchley and everything like that. That show, the only reason for it existing because it's given away $5 million. And it's got a lot of bad tropes going for it. But I have to be honest with myself. The worst show in 2024, not just here in the US, but in the world, is Gladiators Australia. Now, the UK Gladiators, which aired earlier in the year, showed us what a Gladiators revival should be. It should be bright. It should be fun. It should be a good throwback to the early 90s, mid-90s. Just over-the-top spectacle. And that's what that show was. Over-the-top spectacle, and the hosting of Bradley Walsh and Barney Walsh was actually pretty fun to watch. And the Gladiators showed a lot of personality, and it was fantastic to see. Conversely, on the Australian version, the set design was non-existent. Like, they threw together a bunch of cheap set pieces and called that the set. Then you have the wall, which is essentially the same ugly purple pegs or hand grips in the same way that it was shaped, not only in the prelims, but in the semis and the finals. The hosting was meh. Like, it was just there. Like, everything about it seemed there, and the biggest problem to me was there was no crowd. Like, I was watching the first episode with a few friends on Discord, and somebody commented that, was this show taped during the COVID era? And we all said, no, this was taped in 2023. So, where Australia pretty much has no COVID restrictions at this point. So, there's no reason not to have an audience. And it made the 2008 US revival seem competent when the 2009 Australian revival was actually really well done. And it showed how to reboot the network. It was slowly paced. It had a lot of gimmicks for the Gladiators, which didn't work, the Contenders, which really didn't work. And you also had a real bad issue with 10. Now, 10 was kind of banking hard that this revival Gladiators would be a hit. And it was on the first episode. It had about 450,000 viewers, which was pretty big for 10. But within the course of a couple of days, it cratered to less than 175,000 viewers watching Gladiators. It got so bad that they were going to have this going for for about a few weeks at least. But everything got sped up, and it forced 10 to move up their revival of Deal or No Deal a few weeks, for at least a week up, just to get the bad taste of Gladiators out of people's mouths. The show tanked, nobody liked it, and then Deal or No Deal came out, and it showed us what a really good revival should be. Fun, loose, exciting. Even though the choice of Grant Denyer as host, I thought originally was, okay, it's 10, and that's gonna be Grant Denyer, because of course every show on 10's gotta have Grant Denyer as a host. But he's proved himself to be very well, good, done, perfect for Deal or No Deal Australia. And also 10's got Wheel of Fortune Australia and that's doing pretty good. So, just because of seeing what gladiators should be in the UK, and France recently has a pretty decent revival, a pretty decent original series of gladiators right now. American gladiators should take a cue from the UK gladiator revival, the French gladiators, and completely ignore the worst show of 2024, Gladiators Australia. Well, I hope you enjoyed this look at the best, worst, and blandest shows of 2024. I thank everybody for watching. Feel free to like, subscribe, and in the comment section, tell me what your thoughts are for the worst shows, the best shows, and the blandest shows of 2024 were. And if you want to see videos a day in advance, become a Patreon backer at patreon.com/GameShowGumbo. I am Cindy Seidelman, and one last time for 2024, bye-bye!